episode of Access Granted. Delighted to have Daniel on the sofa. Daniel, I'll say Daniel because I know you got a surname as well, but I don't actually know how to pronounce your surname, so that's probably a good place to start.
Dzikowski.
Dzikowski.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky one to pronounce.
It is. I also didn't want to attempt it. Okay, so I was like, I'll make a fairly mess. So thanks for doing that for me.
That's okay, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here. Really, thank you.
Nice one. And Dzikowski, where does that originate from?
From Poland? Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a traditional Polish name. It's not popular in England, obviously, but in Poland everyone knows it.
Nice.
So it's like it does have a meaning to it. Like dziki means wild, so it's wild boar. So, like wild pig.
Okay. So, Daniel, yeah. Wild pig.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that actually resonate with you?
In moments, yeah.
Yeah, in moments, I'm a wild pig.
Yeah.
Okay, so glad to have Daniel the wild pig with me today.
Yeah.
So Polish. Were you born in Poland?
No, I was born in the UK, but both my parents were Polish, and yeah. So, but I was raised in a sort of traditional Polish, environment at home, and food, everything, cuisine. Yeah. Okay.
And culturally, like from my naivety, Polish upbringing, is there outside of the cuisine? Is there other values that are very traditional in Poland that UK audience might not be aware of?
That's a good question. There are. So big work ethic, which is you could say that about any culture, really, any nation, but and I think it's again because of Poland's geographical location, they have to be quite sort of strong, because constantly throughout history Poland has been attacked from all sorts, so like you have to be strong.
No messing around,
especially the women.
Fair play. So my partner's Croatian, and similarly she grew up in the Civil War there, and I go there and they mean business for sure.
Yeah.
My dad warned me when I asked for his permission to propose. Like, you realise that, like, what you're getting yourself into. Like, she's one of the most stubborn people I know. And actually, at that point, I really didn't know that about her. But now I will always remind her, like, seriously are.
Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
So do you ever go back often, Poland? Or do you ever go? I know you weren't born there.
Yeah. Occasionally, sometimes. I haven't been for a long time though. It's usually like sometimes for a wedding and sometimes for a funeral. So it's like wedding and funeral. That's when a whole family meet, and So I do like going, but I haven't been for a long time.
So I should probably say this is the first time we've obviously met in person.
Yes.
We got introduced to me through a mutual contact, and we've had a few. I would say I've enjoyed my 2 conversations with you over Zoom so much. I was like, look, I've got this podcast on the go. Do you want to come down? So it's really nice to see you in the flesh. You're really quite tall as well, aren't you? Actually.
Yeah.
You don't get that from Zoom actually. So I'm like, actually, what I'm picking up on the. You got people sat down.
You don't know.
It must be what you're over 6 foot.
6'2". Yeah.
Congratulations.
But...
So okay, look, I digress. Let's get into like you and your story. So talk me through like your childhood, and I know you ended up going into business. So let's hear it first.
I did right from the beginning. So
from reception.
I don't know. I wasn't expecting you to ask me that, but I don't know. From a young age, I was personality-wise, I was quite a shy kid. I was very sort of within myself. I don't know if it was I was naturally that way, or perhaps it was a Polish background. Who knows? But I remember going to school, and I couldn't understand everything because when I was born, my parents spoke to me in Polish. So my sister, who's like 9 months older than me, we went to the same school, same class at school. So when we get to school, we were always speaking Polish with each other. And the teachers wanted to separate us and said, look, to my parents, they said, you've got to speak English to them because they're not going to learn anything. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, and then from that point on, my parents started speaking English to me, and I kind of lost the Polish. From a young age, it was actually quite difficult for me to relate to people because I don't know, I thought differently to most people. And actually part of me never understood certain things about kids, you know, because often kids were a bit horrible to each other. They weren't very nice to each other. And I never understood why kids were like that, even when, you know, when I was young. So yeah, it was a interesting experience.
Interesting, like, okay, being in that environment. What do you think now? Why do you think kids are like that?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I think people carry stuff inside of it, even with kids. You know, maybe they copy their environment, and who knows. And sometimes, you know, people are like that. They're not, you know. And later on, I learned it's a lot of time. It's just people are just joking around. Yeah. But I was quite sensitive.
Having a bit of banter.
Sorry?
Okay. You say having a little bit of banter, like kids in school.
Yeah.
So you say you were sensitive.
I was sensitive, yeah.
Okay. Not so sensitive now.
You'd have to ask the people around me, but yeah. No, I still am. But in a different way. Because before I used to think it was a negative thing, being sensitive. But then I understood that when you actually can listen to people a lot better, when you pick up certain sort of emotions that people are carrying, then you can understand them more. And that's when I started to see the benefit of it. Okay. But I only could see it when I grew up.
And so from school, you go on to college, university?
Yeah, I went to uni.
Where'd you go? What'd you study?
Southampton, actually.
Okay, great city, Southampton.
Yeah. Yeah, so I studied physics with astronomy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that choice. Is it always something you've been obviously interested in?
I wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger, and I'd always been interested in space, all of that. And for me, it was just fascinating, this whole sort of, space. I used to love Star Trek, and yeah,
space blows my mind. Like when I think about, and see if I've got this bit right, because you're the one that's educated in the space, but isn't it something like there's 2 trillion galaxies? And one of the galaxies is the Milky Way, which you couldn't even comprehend. I tried to. I'm like, 2 trillion galaxies. One of them is the Milky Way. The Milky Way's got 200 billion stars in it, and one of those stars is our sun, and then there's us on a rock in the middle of nowhere.
That's the way it seems at the moment. That's what current science says, yeah.
Right.
And, you know, obviously they say it's a Big Bang, stars flying away from each other.
I feel like you're going to take me down a different thesis to that then. Are you going to take me down a different... We're in a computer game somewhere. Is that what you think?
Do you know what? I think it could be a simulation at some level, yeah. Yeah. If we go deep into things, I think...
Well, let's just go with the flow. Like let's go down that.
You mean the Matrix?
Yeah. So you think of real life Matrix?
Yeah, at some level, I think there's different physical planes, and this is just one plane of existence. And although I can't, and when we come to this plane, we forget everything, and we forget everything we know for the purpose of learning in this plane, in the physical plane, which is the densest plane there is.
Okay.
And this is where also there's the most pain, the most suffering that happens. In the other planes, in the higher planes like this, the causal plane, and I forgot the other plane, there's, things are manifested much quicker and things aren't as painful. But in this plane we are, the need to grow is much greater, because of the amount of suffering there is. I don't know if that...
Yeah, no, I'm doing my best to keep up with it. I'm enjoying. My brain's going like here, down.
But to be honest with you, this is all theoretical.
Yeah, who knows, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
When I think about the universe and that thesis, I'm like, if we are on this rock and this is the greatest party ever, right? Because who knows? Who knows what's out there? The math would suggest that we're not alone. When I think about it, I'm like 2 trillion galaxies. 200 billion stars, etc. But then the Matrix one is also another interesting way of thinking about it. Elon Musk would be like, okay, you consider how quickly technology is evolving.
Yeah.
It's very conceivable to think that it's, you could be in a computer game in a simulation, because you would, something like 98% of what your eye sees it believes.
Yeah, I think our perception of reality is skewed. And ultimately, what we're carrying inside of us skews that perception. So I think there's a much deeper truth that we carry that is available to us. Like, for example, our sense of separation, I think, is an illusion at some level. So there's a me here and there's a you sitting there. And it looks like we're separate. But I think that's a perceptual illusion at some level. And ultimately, when you actually clear out all the sort of stories that you tell yourself and the belief systems and this, what's inside of you, more of the truth will be revealed to you. You'll start to see there is no separation. There's just a sense of oneness. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The astronomy, physics. So this has always been, you going back to you doing your degree in that space, right? That's always been, obviously, you've always been fascinated, I guess, and a big thinker when it comes to these types of topics.
For me, it's about looking for the truth.
Okay.
What is actually the truth in any situation? What is the truth in sort of our world, in the universe, and what's the inner truth as well?
Okay, so the big questions of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't know why I've been like that.
That's interesting.
That's
so
just
it'd be cool to dig into that. So,
Yeah.
why do you think that you are as an individual, as a personality, that you're driven so much by the big questions? Because not every day you sit on a sofa. Not every day you sit on a sofa and chat to somebody about life this way.
I don't know. Always when I have conversations with people, I end up speaking about the big things in life. Yeah, the big questions. I don't know. For me, I think it's about because I don't know the answers. There's certain things that still I don't understand, like everyone. So I want to search and find out why are we here? What is this all about? And why do we do what we do? Starting a business. Why do you start a business in the end? What's the core reason? And ultimately, that's always been a part of me, sort of the person who I am, that deep inner seeking to understand people and the world around us and to see what is really the truth.
Continue to take us through your journey. It'd be nice to just kind of piece all that together and then come back to some of this stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, you went to university in Southampton, studied that. Where did the journey take you after that?
So after I graduated, I basically started working for some technology firms, but I had quite a difficult childhood. So there was some inner stuff that plagued me. And so I was, when I left university and I went to work for these technology companies, I always knew there was a part of me that wanted to, again, find out what's this part of me that doesn't feel content. That, because I always believed that we could be happy, completely happy. Uh-huh. So I started doing sort of reading a lot about inner work and when I started my first business,
what were the technology companies? What sort of people were you working with at that point?
So the first company I worked for was a company called Amacom Technologies, and they created the very first portable hard disk. Okay. So you get these hard disks now, and they came up with the first one, which was, I don't know if you remember parallel ports for printers.
No.
Okay, so it was so basically connected via the parallel port, and I was involved in supporting this product. So it was a small company, and what they'd done was really unique because no one had ever done it before. And I was doing the support, and that was good fun. It worked some interesting characters. So yeah.
And then after that?
And then after that, I worked for a hotel. So I was a firm of hotels called Firmdale, which and created these really luxurious boutique hotels. But
what were you doing for them?
Just again, technology. So sort of assistant IT manager, and looking after the computer systems for there. But from that point, I realised as well that I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to create my own business because when you work for individuals and you see perhaps, there's certain things you could do better. There's certain things that you perhaps sometimes in that day and age, employers weren't that focused about their staff. It was all employer focused. And for me, what I really wanted to do was to create something myself that would really make a difference to, people. And I felt that I could do it.
Do that by yourself, or do that on
do that. Start a business and basically create a company where people love to work in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go on to that. Your business then. So at this point, are you gonna go out? You're gonna set up your own company. What was it called? What did you set up?
Yeah, I set up a company called Purple Lattice, IT consultancy, and when I set it up, the first thing, because I was a great reader, so I read everything there was about business.
Okay. Favorite book? Favorite business books? I know you spoke a lot about inner work, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that.
Business book, Maverick, by Ricardo Semler. So in Maverick, he basically he talks about this is a company in Brazil called Semco, and Ricardo Semler talks about how he took over his company from his father, and he basically created the most unusual workplace there was. So in Semco, he basically made everything transparent. So everyone could see how much everyone else earned in the company. So that was transparent. The workers could sack their managers if they didn't do a good job. There were certain roles that weren't like, I don't think they had cleaners or secretaries. Yeah. Every section this was a big company, Semco, in Brazil. And this was during the 1980s. And when Brazil was going through a recession, it was the only company that was doing amazing. And every section of a business ran like its own small business. Everything was transparent. Everything was just completely unique. And the really well-run companies of today copied their business models from Semco. And you would get these companies from New York and from the US coming to Semco saying, everyone's talking about this company, how amazing it's, managed, and they would come to visit Semco and just find out how it works.
Yeah, all that open transfer. It's quite difficult for people to let go of. It's very difficult for a leadership necessarily to let go and be so transparent with numbers and staff being able to sack their managers. There's a book called Corporate Rebels. Have you read that?
No.
So similar sort of outlook. They go around to some of the world's most successful companies and look at the ones that are doing the most successful companies that are doing things differently.
Yeah.
On that type of management style, and just Patagonia, they went and spoke to them and a few others, and it just reminds me of that book. So Maverick is a definite recommendation then on the book.
Yeah, 100%. But it takes, when you read it and you think, how can a company run this way? Yeah, I mean now it's different, but when I started my business 20 years ago, you would never ever think that a company could run this way, because it was all, the traditional form of management, perhaps micromanagement. Everything's hidden. The employees aren't sort of, communicated to. They're not really listened to. But this company done things completely the opposite. It just completely inverted that pyramid, and the owner of a business, he wanted to be the support, and he would tell people, you can come to work if you want to, or you don't have to. It's up to you. You decide between your team, and everyone decided between the team. Yeah, and everything was flexible. So sometimes you turn up at 10, other times you turn up at different times, and it was just. But
that was like chaos.
Yeah, and because everyone saw each other's salaries, occasionally there would be. And the other thing is the workers would choose their own salaries. That's the other thing.
Okay.
So when you would be interviewed for this company, the interviewer would ask, so how much do you think you're worth? And you'd say, well, I think I'm worth whatever. Yeah, I don't know, 35,000. This was, I can't remember what it is in Brazil, but... Yeah. And then you would have to justify. And if you made a justification, and they would say, yeah, okay, we agree to that. You know, you can earn that much. Or if you didn't, they would say, well, actually, your points don't seem a bit valid. Mm-hmm. And other unusual thing about this company is that when, for example, you had a team of people and the manager left and someone wanted to become the manager, they would get paid less than the team they managed. And this was to deter people from who may just want the salary. It's like initially you would get paid less, and then if you've done a good job, then your salary would go up and up and up. But you would have to have the team saying, yeah, he's doing a really good job as a manager.
Did you take this book and these philosophies into your business?
Yeah, this book and the other books that I read. But one of the things that I also did was I contacted Sunday Times have a top 100 best places to work for in the UK.
Yeah.
And I contacted the top 3 organisations.
Who were there at the time?
So at the time, there was a company called Happy and What If, and another company, I can't remember the third company. And 2 of them basically invited me to their premises and basically told me how to run my business in the way that they do. Mm-hmm. And how they run their business in such a way where their staff absolutely love working for them. And I remember going into Happy, and as I walked through, I remember walking through the door, and the first thing I meet is a staff member, and he's just so happy. He's like, "Hey, who are you?" And I'm Daniel, yeah. And he's so friendly so friendly towards me. And I remember going through the organisation, going to the offices and meeting the managing director, and she's so friendly. She's so switched on. Her name's Kathy Busani.
Okay.
And Happy did training. And one of the training modules was about how to create an amazing workplace. And I went on this training module, and at the end of a course, she basically says to me, look, I want to give you some of our company manuals, and you can take this and start creating an amazing business with a great culture. And so she gave me some amazing advice, and some of her advice was, one of the best pieces of advice she gave me was interview in large groups.
Okay.
Yeah, she gave me lots of different pieces of advice.
That's a real standout one for you. So when you're interviewing, you got one job, bring in 20 people and have them like talk in front of you, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I would interview, I would do exercises. So for example, when I used to interview for my business, one of exercises I would do is, we've all been in a plane crash. There's
okay, here we go.
There's 7 of you.
We've got the Matrix, the game. Okay, different places. Now we're in a plane crash. Okay, hit me this.
And you have a list of survival items. Choose between you which ones you would take, which ones you would.
Between all of us in the interview.
Yeah, in the interview. So they would have to speak with you.
Give me what tools have we got?
I don't know, knife, matches, top, food.
Yeah.
And so I would ask them to, do that exercise, and then I'd see how they communicate with each other.
Okay.
And at the time I had my wife helping me with this. And always at the beginning of these exercises, at the beginning of the interviews, I would introduce my wife. And I'll say, hi, this is Susie. She's going to be helping me. And then I would give them certain exercises to do. I'd give them technical tests. I'd give them a comprehension test. But the last thing I would ask them was, what is the name of the person helping me? And I always found, especially for my industry, the ones which had the best communication skills, the best sort of people person, always remembered her name. Yeah.
Nice.
And some of the other questions I would ask them is, tell me some nice things about yourself. Yeah. The people that, again, were really good team players, that really understood how to work together, could always find really good things to say about themselves. But I was really surprised how often people struggled with that. Like, you know, I remember one guy, I saw him looking at the question and he couldn't say anything.
Just nothing.
Yeah.
So that's a red herring for you, like, okay.
I mean, it was.
Let's stay with that for a minute. What's the 3 best things about Daniel?
I think I'm a good communicator, get sensitive, and I listen.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you go back to it's a really nice traits, right?
Yeah.
I really love the whole philosophy that you're bringing into this conversation. The way that you the books you're reading, the way you're trying to take that into your business, or the way even the way that you're running group interviews and stuff. It's really enlightening.
Yeah, I think it was because I knew when I left my my company initially when I was working for that hotel firm that I needed to find a way of creating a really good culture. Because ultimately, if you have a great culture and people love working in your organization, then everything becomes easier. It just becomes more effortless. And whereas if you don't create that culture from the onset, then it becomes very difficult. You have to micromanage. You have to keep watch, and ultimately, it's to do with yourself. Because part of the challenge in creating a good culture is giving up that control, that need to control. Because often people try and control either their business or their people out of fear. Whereas if you're able to go within yourself and just clear out your fear, then that will be passed on to your employees, and you'll start to find that they start to make decisions which are really well aligned with in business interests.
Do you think culture's set at the top?
Yes, 100%. There's no other way you can do it. Yeah, culture has to be set from the highest point, from the people that run their businesses. Because if it's not set there, then you're never going to have that.
I know you made me aware that you exited your business. So how long were you running? How long was the business in operation until you sold it?
I was running it, I think, for about 15 years. And then I got someone else to run it for me. And they ran it for about 4 years. And then we decided to sell the business. Yeah. But yeah.
Do you miss it? I know you're doing. We'll move on to what you're doing nowadays, but do you miss it?
There's certain aspects I miss.
Yeah.
Because I loved, as much as it was an IT consultancy, and sometimes it got stressful, but I loved the interaction with the people. It was great. You would have some
people make life so enriching, don't they?
Yeah, and we were quite selective about what clients we chose as well. We wouldn't just take anyone because we wanted really nice people. So all our suppliers, the way I selected my suppliers was I would interview my suppliers as well and see what kind of culture they had. Because I understood that if they created a good culture, doing business with them would be much easier.
Much more sustainable.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, it would be, they would go out of the way, because as soon as you have a great culture, you tend to have very good customer service. And it's not something that needs to be forced, because it comes from within the culture itself. Because those kind of cultures will pick the people that are, people persons.
Go on the 15-year journey in that business. Looking back, what was the toughest moment, would you say, on that journey?
I think part of the toughest moment and most challenging was to sell it. Probably to make the decision to sell it, and to follow my heart in doing what I'm doing, because it brought up a lot of fear. And this was fear that had,
Does that feel to you like your heart was whispering, like this is now time for you to move away, and then you had to have the courage to listen to those whispers and then go and take the step to do it?
Yeah, and there was a lot of fear, and if I'm completely honest, I probably dragged out the sale more than I should have done because of that fear.
What was the fear?
It was survival, actually. Come to think of it, it was when I felt into it. It was a survival fear. It was like, because I'm going into the unknown. I don't know where the income is going to come. And I had because originally I wanted to go out there and just do what I'm doing now voluntarily and to help people. But then I found you can't always do that. Yeah. Because sometimes when you do things voluntarily and people don't take it seriously, it's strange that if you charge a premium, they're much more likely to take things seriously. So ultimately, for me, the biggest fear was in the selling of it. But I had a lot. The challenges I had. I don't know. There was because the thing
being a business is always many.
Sorry,
being a business owner is always many challenges. You probably just trying to recollect one of them, sort of thing. But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
the
but
fear of selling.
It was like, again, at the beginning, it's always getting those clients. Because probably at the beginning, it was because I didn't consider myself a natural salesperson, and I had this specific vision of what a salesperson should be like.
Yeah. Or not be like.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So as soon as I saw that, change that vision, then, okay, it became easier.
Okay, cool.
It became easier to just, and it was just natural. It was just, I started enjoying the sales process.
Another one of those rare stories about somebody built business over 15 years, kept it going, all the tribulations that come with that, and then sold it, and then you've moved on to something else. So congratulations for going on that journey and doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
What would be your, if you were to give a aspiring business owner one piece of advice from your experience, or any business owner, what would be your one piece of advice to somebody running a company?
If you have staff, treat your staff well. Yeah, create that amazing culture. If you can do that, then things are going to be so much easier. Yeah,
nice, love it.
But also, you do that inner work too.
Okay, so let's go on to inner work.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you're up to now, and then I know that's going to lead in nicely to all the inner work and stuff that you've been doing, and what you're out talking to people about. So, what are you up to with your time now?
So at the moment, I do coaching, professional speaking, and that's the sort of the letting go aspect. But also do a bit of cryptocurrency as well. Which one do you want to start with? Probably do the coaching.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's Clear the Path, right?
Yes.
Is your company name for it?
Yeah.
Going around speaking. What talk to me about the ethos and the philosophy around what you're talking to people about.
So I tend to like to take, again, the business angle because I have business experience. But it's about really looking within yourself to clear the blocks that you have to business success.
Okay.
And ultimately, when you're in your business and you come across these challenges, those challenges appear as something outside of us. So, for example, it could be not getting enough sales. It could be difficult, challenging employees. Mm-hmm. It could be a project that you're going towards, and this project has some challenges. Now, these challenges appear outside of us. They look like they're coming outside of us, but the actual feeling within is what we have to look at.
That's the remedy. Okay. So, as an example, let's take a sales discussion. So,
yeah.
Right, I'm going to be doing, 10 sales a month, and at the moment I'm doing 5 sales a month.
Yeah.
And I'm really frustrated that I'm doing 5 sales a month.
Okay, so what I would do, and I would say, okay, so how do you feel about that?
I feel really disappointed about it.
Okay, so where do you feel that?
In my chest.
Okay, and how strong is it?
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
Okay, so as you're able to sit with that feeling in your chest and to connect with it, then you'll find that it starts to dissolve.
Okay. So the remedy bit, okay, I've got to sit and own the feeling.
You own it,
let it pass
yeah.
consciously, let it dissolve,
Yeah.
and therefore that emotional block that's making me feel the anxiety, for want of a better word, around it,
Yeah.
can dissipate. I'm like,
Yeah. And
I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
And what you may discover underneath is the core reason that creates that feeling. So it could be frustration or annoyance, but then underneath that could be a feeling of I can't sell, a feeling that comes from I can't sell, I'm not worthy, or something along those lines. And when you connect with that feeling and start to clear that, now all of a sudden there's going to be a new belief system that comes, and a feeling that comes with it of, oh my God, this is possible, I can do this. Whereas previously, because of that stuck emotion, it felt impossible. But now it's going to feel possible.
Yeah, what a great feeling, right? How encouraging. Like, to me, that sounds like, I'm Josh, I'm running off petrol, and you're helping me change my internal chemistry, so now I'm going to be an electric car.
Ultimately, yeah, you're changing those blocks within us to release them so everything can accelerate more smoothly, and you can just feel a sense of lightness when you go about.
So from your work today, what do you think or observed or feel holds most people back? What are typical blocks that people have?
Well, one of the biggest blocks is not seeing that the problem is inside of them.
Okay. So it's so we're looking in the wrong direction.
Ultimately, we're looking in the wrong direction, even if it really seems like the problem is outside of them.
Like Michael Jackson, The Man in the Mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
Should I start singing?
Go for it.
I used to love that song, by the way. Really good.
Yeah.
I still love that song. But anyway, yeah. We're looking in the wrong direction.
We're looking in the wrong direction. And ultimately, what tends to happen is, yes, you can change your outside world and solve the problem in some way. But if you haven't dealt with an internal feeling, you're just going to create another problem that triggers it again.
Uh-huh.
Because everything happens outside of us in order for us to heal what's inside of us, okay? So if for example, if there's an employee that's been very difficult and it keeps bringing up the same feeling, that is happening to help us clear that feeling. Once we clear it, that person outside of us will start to shift their behavior. They no longer need to act that way because we've cleared what's inside of us. And because our emotions are partly because they're hidden, they're unconscious. So when they're unconscious, we don't know they're there. So they have to attract people and circumstances into our life experience to make those feelings conscious so we can clear them.
Okay. Is there any practical examples from your own life where you've gone through this process that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah. So, there's quite a few of them, but one of them was, I remember I had this judgment of Indian people.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had this judgment for a while. And I remember one day, and there was always like some sort of barrier. And I remember one day, I see that I'm carrying this judgment. And it's actually, the judgment comes from fear. It was coming from fear. And it was very subtle, and I hadn't noticed it. And one day I see it. I see how I'm judging Indian people.
What's the judgment?
It was specifically of young Indian men driving around in their flashy cars. That was the judgment that I had.
Okay.
And it was an insecurity from within me. And one day I see it. Yeah. And as I see it, I get all these tears and these feelings of sort of sadness come up, because I realized that my judgment and my fear had affected everything. Had affected my ability to connect with people and to connect with them. And when I saw it and I released all of this, this took me probably about an hour, it was like a deep inner knowing. And from that point on, every single relationship I had with my Indian clients shifted. It was much easier to negotiate,
Yeah.
to speak. There were,
It almost sounds like, this is I see the Indian guy in the flashy car, and then I have this judgment, preconception. But really, so first of all, by the way, I've just noticed that. I've just watched myself have this judgment of this guy in this Indian car. So that's real progress, right? Oh, by the way, I've just watched. Why did I do that? Like, why do I? And then, okay, this feeling is coming from fear or insecurity in myself.
Fear, insecurity. Yeah.
And if you're carrying that around with you, which you had been, that's kind of like a baggage you're carrying around to take it into interactions with people like that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if you can take the baggage away and go through that, consciously unskilled to consciously, okay, I'm going to rewire myself. You can, it's not so heavy to be carrying around. You can have better relationships and stuff with people.
Yeah, and this works.
And this is looking into the mirror, right? This is
exactly, because everyone is a reflection.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, of who you are. And when you start to see that, then you no longer start to blame other people, get upset at other people, but you start to, why am I judging people? Or why do I feel this way?
So on that, looking into the mirror, so personal, personal story. So 2016, broke up with a girlfriend I've been with for a long time, right? Broke my heart. Yeah. Moved it back in with my parents. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm crying and I'm like, fuck it, I feel terrible. I don't want to feel like this ever again. Do you know what I mean? And that was the first time in my life, and I was 26 at this point, where I was like, actually, I'm looking in the mirror and being like, I don't want to feel this way, but this works on me now. Do you know what I mean? So the point I'm trying to make is that the serendipity of life in that circumstance led me to look inwards and do the work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because I was like unhappy. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So, had I not, I've done a lot of work since, I do a lot of reading. Gratitude really changed my life. I really enjoy that practice.
Yeah.
I think, going back to thinking about the universe and stuff, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, this is 400 trillion to one shot that I'm even here, whether it's the computer game or whatever. But I find that feeling quite liberating, because I've got nothing to fear. Like, it's the greatest lottery of all time. I mean, what have I got to worry about? I'm sat on a Sunseeker, right? It's like, not that it's mine, by the way. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's don't get caught up in that stuff. But coming back to what you're saying, that inner work for me personally only came out of circumstance. Was that similar for you, or was that just that you've always been conscious of your own thoughts? Because that's one thing. In doing introspection is one thing in itself, isn't it? To be like, okay, I'm watching myself. Why did I react that way? Why did I think this way?
But the thing is, at first I wasn't conscious of my own thoughts. I didn't even know I was observing my thoughts. I thought I was my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what happened.
You can separate you weren't able at that point.
I didn't know there was a separation. And it's only, I remember reading a Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
You read it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So in the book, he talks about how you had awareness observing the thoughts. As soon as I read that, it was like, oh my God, that means I can shift it. I can change it. I'm not my thoughts.
So then you think it's an education piece. The fact that you were educating yourself, you were then, deriving more wisdom in yourself to be, okay, now I've read that, I can understand that. And now, I can look at my own thoughts.
Well, I wish it was that easy. It's not always that easy.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that insight was powerful, though. That sort of seeing that you are the awareness, watching the thoughts, watching everything, in fact, it brought profound changes.
On books, then, let's stay on sort of this type of topic. Give me your favourite 3 books.
Probably Power of Now, I Am That.
Who's that by?
He's some Indian guy with a very long surname.
Okay.
And, it's very difficult to pronounce. And probably one of the first ones I read was The 7 Habits by Stephen Covey. I'd say, that was the very first book of its sort of personal development book that I read.
Nice. Podcasts? Do you listen to a lot? Obviously, access granted.
Not so much now, because I got to a stage where I had read so much, I'd listened to so much that it was like, I know it's not a question of reading and listening; it's a question of doing the work. Because I remember when I was doing qigong once.
What's that?
It's like a comes from China. It's the Chinese form of yoga, but with movements, so it's sort of gentle movements. And I remember the guy also taught Wing Chun, and what did he say? He said the one thing he said a lot of sort of very memorable things, but one of the things he says, if you're doing too much reading, which I was at the time, you're not really interested in growing, not truly, because you're avoiding it in the book. You're not going inwards, and that kind of
struck a chord with you.
At first I was in sort of no, I don't know. Yeah. And one of the things he said as well is any disagreement is a form of violence. Yeah. And I was like, no. So, yeah.
It makes a lot of sense as you say that. I remember my brother pulled me up and I was in the car and he's like, man, you're analysing everything right now. Like, analysing every thought and stuff and reading all this stuff. And definitely it can get, I feel much better in the last couple of years, letting go so much more of like too much learning, right? Just going with the flow a bit more.
Yeah, because you can find yourself avoiding.
As opposed to be when you get into personal development, it can be quite like, oh wow, I can learn that. And I'm doing that.
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
I'm gonna go do some ice baths. I'm gonna do some meditation.
Yeah,
and it's like all of this stuff, and actually too much of it is actually a little bit distracting.
Yeah, because you can use it to avoid what the true issue is. Like, kind of like you pretend it's a.
Is this me getting a therapy session now, isn't it? This is. George, what are you like? What are you trying to like not be doing?
Yeah, no, I mean, everyone goes. If you go on this journey, you'll go through that stage. But yeah, it's.
What sort of practices do you do regularly, say, or like a key for you to be a high performing?
For me, again, gratitude's an amazing thing to do. Meditation.
Is that sort of like a guided meditation or a mantra-based meditation?
No, just
sitting in silence.
Yeah, pretty much just sitting and just being.
These like daily practices.
Yeah. I mean, with sort of what I talk about, letting go, and it's almost a constant. So, for example, if I'm speaking to you and something you say, some sort of sense of uncomfortableness comes up in me, I'm like, okay, let me feel that whilst I'm speaking to Josh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, it's in my chest. It's like.
But made you feel uncomfortable at all?
No.
I hope not.
No. But I just sense it and I be conscious of it, and that just allows it to just dissolve. And but if I start wanting it to go, start pushing against it, then that push is resisting it, so it continues. So.
What would be your three like most practical? I keep saying threes today. I'm going to.
You're right.
I'm going
Yeah.
to stay on threes. Lucky number three, right? I'm going to end on my three question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What are three practical tips? Give me three practical tips for the audience listening to improve their own lives from an inner work perspective.
I think find some time. I mean, it depends on each person, but find some time to just experience silence and everything that comes with experiencing the silence within you. So if you're the type of person that is constantly doing in order to just keep busy, then there's something within you that's you're avoiding, and something that's come up. So just sit with that feeling of, God, I can't sit still. Sit with that unpleasant stillness. Yeah,
that as one of the three, right? That's kind of like a skill right now in a world of huge distraction, like the way the world's moving. That's almost even harder to do than ever.
One of the things I give my clients, and it depends, a task that I give my clients is, can you sit by yourself for 24 hours without doing anything? Yeah. So, and depending on, it depends on the person, because sometimes it'll be like an hour. There's one client I gave him an hour to do, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it an hour just sitting. Yeah, because you're not allowed to distract yourself with your phone or anything. You just sit for an hour.
How many people have you given that challenge to?
Probably about 12, 13.
How many have succeeded?
One.
Wow.
Yeah. The 24-hour one, almost no one does.
Okay. You ever been on like a silent retreat or anything like that?
Yeah. That's part of the reason I...
you brought it in as a practice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when you're in silence, the stuff will come up.
How long did you do?
10 days. But then everyone's doing it around you, so it's not that much of a difficult.
Like sat in a cave somewhere?
No, there's Vipassana retreat, so
they
don't stick you in a cave.
I'm messing when I say cave.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but yeah, you can do like a 10-day silent retreat, and it's very powerful, because I did it after this is actually how I started doing the letting go. Like when my father died, was about 13, 14 years ago. I didn't cry at his funeral because of, I remember it was in Poland, and his body was there, because in Poland they showed the body, and the women were crying, but the men weren't. They had these stoic expressions, very serious. And I wanted to cry, but I didn't. And I'm naturally sensitive, but I held back because no one was crying, and I felt I'm not going to be seen as a man. That was my thinking at the time. So I held back. And then I go on this meditation course 3 months later, and this was the third time I had done a 10-day course. And what I experienced from day one is that my mind could not sit still, which was strange for me because the first 2 times I had done it, I could achieve some degree of stillness. My mind became quiet. But this time I had so much pain in my back and in my shoulders as well as the mind constantly thinking. And I'm thinking, what's going on? That's when I was kind of thinking, why am I doing this? And then on the 7th day, I go to sit down. It's 4:00 in the morning. Sit down in my little cubicle, given a small cubicle. I start having all these thoughts about my father, and I just start crying, and like all this grief, shame, guilt, sadness, all these emotions start coming up. And literally, I don't stop crying. I cry basically all day. And then about 1:00 comes, and you are allowed to speak to the teacher if you have a question. And I go to the teacher and I say, look, I need to leave. Like, I can't meditate. He looks at me, Indian dude, and he says, it's good that it's come out. That's all he said. Yeah. And next day, I go to sit down. That day again was a write-off. Just cried all day. Next day I go to sit down, and all of the pain in my back and shoulders has disappeared. It's just gone. Yeah. And my mind was so still. Like it was, I could just take it anywhere, because in Vipassana you do something called the body scan, and it would just stay there. It wasn't thinking about anything. It was just still. That's when I realized everything that we hold within us affects our physical body, our mental state, prevents us from seeing things clearly, affects the way we do things, affects our body's ability to heal, all of that. And when you can actually get in touch with it and release all those feelings, everything starts to flow more easily. That's when I realized I need to start sort of sharing this work. I need to start, going within more deeply.
It's a great story. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. It's amazing when you go through these experiences in your life. And I've had a couple, like, not to that degree, but I've been in meditation and then came out of it and been crying my eyes out and been like, it's been really, and just the feeling afterwards. Yeah. It's really nice. It feels really natural. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels really natural, like the human. It's really difficult for me to articulate, but it feels like my truest nature whenever I've had those experiences, and I've kind of got rid of that stuff, and it's liberating.
Yeah, so many things happen when you release, when you let go, and in different areas in your life. I remember one of the experiences I had. This was about 5 years ago. I think I've said this to you before. Was when I was it was the middle of the night. I'd woken up and I was in the middle of a nightmare. It was about 1:00 in the morning, and I had this intense fear coming up. I didn't know why it was there. And ordinarily what I would have done was avoid or not face this fear. I would have switched on the light, put on the radio. But this time I just decided to sit with it. And I said to myself, I'm going to sit with it as long as it takes, because I'm tired of fear controlling my life. And at this point, this fear gets so intense, like I'm literally drenched. My heart is pumping away, and like I'd get these goose pimples all over my body, and this huge wave of fear came up, and I'm like, I'm just going to face this. And it got so intense, I thought, oh my God, I started getting these thoughts, I'm going to die, I'm going to... It's probably not realistic, but that's what was coming up. And I'm like, I'm going to just sit with this. And as I was sitting with it, it just dissolves. And then the next wave comes up, even more intensely, more fear. And then after about an hour of doing this, I start getting these memories back from when I was a kid, and some incident that had happened when I used to live with my parents, and what I'd experienced. And the fear gets even more intense. So I'm just there with it, sitting with it. I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to sit with it.
You've learned that skill over your life, right? To be able to sit in there and sit in there and know that it's going to dissipate and go away.
Yeah, and that's what, because at some point it gets so intense, you just want to avoid it.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot with different things. But
it's easier to be distracted. It's easier to avoid these feelings, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what you're saying, and having, I guess, some personal experiences, you have to sit with it and go through it, because that's how you get the other side.
Yeah, and this is what happened for me, is when I eventually cleared the fear, I went to sleep. I'd probably only had about 4 hours sleep that night. So I go to work the next day, and I am feeling amazing. I'm feeling efficient. I'm feeling just really like, just enjoying, work, and just love speaking with people. And over the next 3 months, I noticed the fear in every aspect of my life had gone down. My fear in making business decisions had gone down. My fear in speaking with difficult customers had gone down. My fear in, public speaking had gone down. Even my fear of speaking to my ex-wife, I had a fear there, and that had gone down. And also, I had this fear of swimming as well. It wasn't a fear of swimming; it was a fear of water and drowning. Fear of drowning. And I remember going.
I think most people would fear drowning.
Yeah. But but I didn't notice that I had been swimming for all my life, and I hadn't noticed until I had processed this fear. Also, I felt differently going into the point. I'm like, hold on, I feel different. And then I realised I'd cleared the fear, and at a much deeper level.
And go out into the world and operate at a higher level and feel better and have more energy and add more value to people around you, right?
Yeah, but I noticed everyone else carried fear as well, but they were unconscious of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people's actions and decisions and the way that what they do comes from fear. And I started seeing this so clearly in people, what fears they're carrying it. But the thing is, they couldn't see it.
Yeah. You've been through it, and now you're imparting your wisdom on others, aren't you? You're taking them through that journey. Yeah. Let's stick with, so we had one, right, silence, and then we've had this little play around silence, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So what will be your second one for people?
Be tenacious. Don't give up. If there's something that, we're talking about sort of
inner work.
Yeah. Don't give up. Be tenacious.
Nice.
And it's the will, really, that is key. In anything, it's the will. Yeah, it's like sitting with feelings requires will. Going within requires will to really look to see what is there. Why am I keep attracting this experience, for example? Why do I find it so difficult or why doesn't my people listen to me, and why do I get upset by that? Yeah, and really try and look within to find the answer, and that requires patience and time and will.
Number 3?
gratitude. Yeah, be grateful. Nice. Because life is a beautiful thing, and we have some amazing experiences, and everything that comes into our life happens to help us at some level, even though it doesn't seem that way. So that difficult employee or that challenging customer is coming into our experience to help us clear out that stuff that gets triggered.
Well, that's you demonstrating that you're thinking about that, being grateful for it.
Yeah, and when you can, you
just thought about, like, I'm grateful for this person coming into my life this way and showing up and giving me a hard time, because now it's making me deal with this emotion or be better.
Yeah, but it's difficult to see it sometimes.
Yeah, no, of course it is. Yeah, no, I'm not like, yeah, of course it is.
You're like, what?
Mate, you're a human being, aren't you? Like, it's easy to get triggered and, like, pissed off with someone, but like being like, okay, cool, I'm then taking a step back and being like, actually, I'm grateful for competition. They're pushing me to be better. Like, otherwise I'd sit around and be complacent.
Yeah.
Maybe. Do you know what I mean? So, like, cool, I really enjoy that. So silence, tenacity, gratitude. When I say I really enjoyed that, I think, you mentioned earlier, and you've mentioned throughout, about being sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And I think, going back to that, your father's funeral, I think stereotypically a lot of the stuff that you grow up in a society where these types of conversations with men in particular aren't necessarily have been mainstream. I'm not saying, but they're really, really important, right? I think they're going to be even more important for the most successful people. When I say successful, I mean, when I think about like business and competing in sport, I think this stuff makes you a better performer. If you can be more present, if you can deal with suppliers better, if you can make better decisions, you can drive culture, because you can really understand people better. I think those players I think there'll be more buy-in, to my point, around these types of conversations, because it is traditionally quite rah-rah and quite woo-woo and quite that's kind of like the stereotypes that have been around a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, that's what people see of it, but when they actually go within and do it, you'll realise it's the most practical work that you can do.
Yeah, and then you just don't give a fuck, right?
Yeah. But, that grief aspect, because men are often, the traditional viewpoint is men don't cry, you've got to be strong, blah, 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 But when you experience grief and you don't allow yourself to clear that grief creates a disconnection from you and people. So the more times you don't integrate and let go of grief, the bigger the disconnection you experience with people. And because it's all grief is ultimately the same. The grief that, for example, you don't clear out or process when someone dies or you lose something that's really deep to you, that will create that disconnection in all areas of your life. So it will create your ability to fully empathize and connect with your employees. This is all
Star Wars, right?
Sorry?
It's all Star Wars. Disconnection from the good, the good, the light, the good side, where the universe is predicated and built on. That's what it sounds like to me when you say those things, like disconnection to what's the good, it's the dark side and the good side, isn't it?
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. There's a lot of truth in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's all storytelling, just telling the narrative. Okay, I really like that stuff. We could go on for hours on. Just quickly, touch on the Web3 world and what's exciting you in that world.
For me, and I don't know if your audience would understand sort of Web3 and blockchain, it's about what the end goal is again. It's about trying to create a fairer society and create a world for the people, because currently, we have, very few people controlling a lot of the wealth of the world. But Web3 is about bringing people into make things decentralized, more fairer for the people. So you're implementing sort of blockchain solutions to make things a fairer place.
This is interesting. Just even having this topic with you again, as we've gone through this podcast, you're a big ideas. What are the big questions, right? So it's not a surprise to me that you're gravitating towards this space, which is all about how do we make the world a fairer. It's a big question, isn't it? And then you've got this new technology that's been around since 2008, and what's the big promise of it? And it's that it makes the world a fairer place.
Yeah, ultimately the blockchain purists, it makes it a fairer place. It makes it more open, more transparent. people can see what's happening, and I think the mainstream media gives a negative portrayal of cryptocurrency. And look,
there's an argument whether they're even mainstream anymore.
Yeah, and and ultimately they're portraying a certain viewpoint, and the public don't, take that on board and think sort of cryptocurrency and blockchain is a bad thing. But that's a misunderstanding of what it's trying to really achieve. And I think, when you examine it, when you research it in a lot of detail, you'll start to see, oh my God, what it's trying to do is amazing. Some of the things that's happening. There's certain projects I could talk about, which again are business related or help in that field, which I think, wow, this is going to change everything. If people really understood what it's about.
So you're really bullish on it?
I'm bullish in the long term about what it's trying to do, yes. But I question certain, what's going to happen, because the governments don't really like losing control. They want, the governments want to be in control of a lot of things. And yes, there needs to be protection for people and all of that, from scams. Mm-hmm. But I think, ultimately I think a lot of people don't really understand. Maybe the people in the government don't really truly understand, or maybe they do, which is why. But that's another.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Right? We would not want to go there.
We could be here all night. But look, I think let's draw it to a close there. And maybe we'll do this again sometime. But thanks so much for being on it. Definitely was like, I'm going to go with the flow on this one. And we were kind of, started off with the Matrix, start off with your, Polish heritage, and end up with a bit of blockchain and a lot of inner work stuff in the middle there. So some great book recommendations, etc. I loved all the stuff around culture as well, like business culture and how you build your company culture. And also there's just a completely different way to do things if that's how you want to lead, right?
100%.
So really appreciate all those takeaways. I will
Thank
finish
you, Josh.
with my last question. So dinner party, dead or alive, you get 3 guests. Who do you invite?
Okay, so I'm going to go with number 1, Jesus. Because, how did he turn, water into wine?
Okay.
What else? Mike Tyson.
Wow, Jesus and Mike Tyson.
I know.
I love the diversity.
Do you know what? I read his autobiography once. It was probably one of the best autobiographies I've read. Just because of his experience, and he just the things that he went through, and and the third one would be Satoshi Nakamoto.
Okay, if it's just one person.
Yeah, if it is, who knows? It could be a group of people, but
could be.
Yeah, and maybe it's who knows? Yeah,
maybe it's you.
It's not me. I wouldn't need to interview myself.
So for the audience, if anyone doesn't know who Satoshi is,
he's the person that invented Bitcoin, or the group of people that invented Bitcoin.
No one knows, right? It's a mystery.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe you'll never know. No. You'll never know.
I actually think that really plays into that brand's story and chances, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Really cool though. I like it. So we've got Jesus, yourself, Mike Tyson, and Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
Nice one. Daniel, I really enjoyed that. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.